Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Revival of America podcast. This is Jenny. I am the owner and the host of the Revival of America. Tonight we have Derek Johnson in the house, everybody. So please, we know the drill, right? We are going to, he doesn't really do Q&A because through his Q&A, sometimes he does. We'll try to get a few questions in, but he has a lot to talk about. There's a lot going on, everybody. So I think through the course of his conversation with us here, he will have answered probably many of your questions through the course of it. So with that, I won't go to my usual spill, but I will tell you, please be careful who you listen to, who you follow, and what you're putting in your mind. It's Wild West, Wild West out there, everybody. And just like we spoke on the last few podcasts here with Fields and Warren from PPN, it's going to get crazier out there. A lot of confusion going on. So please, everybody, tighten up that circle. If you have 1 to 3 people you've been following, I was saying 3 to 5, but if you're comfortable with the 3 to 5, 1 to 3, whatever it may be, tighten up that circle, everybody, because it's going to get more wild. I'm starting to see some of these people that people have followed, liked, whatever. Now they're now starting to show their true colors. So everybody, please be careful. It's very important. A lot of black pilling going on out there. A lot of confusion, and I can understand how people can feel confused. I'm not that one of those people because I feel very calm about everything and at peace of what's going on, because I'm sitting back and watching the it just unfold, right? We literally are watching the art of war unfold right under our nose. So again, everybody, just be careful, stay out of the noise. There's a lot of noise going on out there for sure, a lot of surface bullshit. So just pay attention to what you're listening to. Also, too, if you come into the podcast later, everybody, you can follow the podcast on the podcast host or the social medias. We are being listened to in over 100 countries, so we are making a lot of good noise. Podcast hosts are iHeartRadio, Spotify, Anchor, Apple, Google, Breaker, PocketCast, Podbean, Riverside, Amazon Music. Social medias are Jenny Dreed Facebook, at Jenny_Dreed X, at JDreed Rumble, at JDreed True Social, at JDreed Instagram, The Revival of America right here on Telegram, and The Revival of America over on YouTube. Also go sign up for the newsletter, everybody, at therevivalofamerica.com. Gives you the updates on the latest podcasts that I put out, as well as the weekly show lineups with the times, the dates, where I'm going to have them. So sign up for that. It is free, and you will know if you don't see it here on any of my other outlets, you'll get it through an email. Again, that's revivalofamerica.com. And if you have a message to get directly to me, or you want to get in touch with John and his staff, or you're looking to purchase Fields books, ask about Carrie Kasem's, what is it? I just lost my train of thought. Anyway, the stuff that she's doing on the holistic side, her pain to purpose, right? How she healed herself from Lyme disease, or Rick Anson from Brain IQ. His all natural supplements, reach out to me at the Revival of America at yahoo.com. That's where I am answering all of my messages. So don't DM me, guys, because I get a lot of DMs and it's just getting too challenging for me to go to all these different locations to find these messages. So it's the Revival of America at yahoo.com. And then last but certainly not least, if you guys have a journey or a story to tell, please feel free to reach out to me at TROA submissions with your story. We do vet them, because unfortunately we do have those shysters that have, they want to put out a fake story just to get on a podcast. So that is unfortunately a thing, but this is the world that we're living in right now, unfortunately. So please, again, it's TROA submissions, and that stands for the Revival of America, submissions at yahoo.com. And I will vet your story, email you if I believe it's a real deal, and we will get your voice, your story on the show, because remember, everybody, it's your voices, your stories that are going to help shape this new world that we are coming into. But again, I'm gonna stress it again. The most important thing I think you guys can do, if you're really that confused in what's going on, or who to listen to, or who to follow, first of all, listen to God first and foremost, and secondly, go follow Donald Trump and the rapid response over there on X, because they're really giving you the information. And I mean, Trump is talking to us, everybody. He's just not directly saying it, but he's telling us without telling us. So with that, everybody, Derek is in the house. I want to welcome Derek to the show. How are you, Derek?
Well, I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. And sorry, I thought I was going to be able to do video with you tonight, but I was having some computer issues. Go figure. So anyway, we're here.
Well, it's I see enough of the computer screen, so I don't mind audio, but
Something different, right?
different.
So, Derek, as I tell my audience all the time, and you probably hear me, I tell everybody to be careful who they listen to and who they follow. We're seeing a lot of the black pilling going on out there, a lot of the noise, and we've been seeing that for, a lot of the time through the course of this many people's journey here. But it's getting louder and louder, and what I am seeing is these black pillars, these fakesters, right, are just, it's more obvious to me of who they really are, and they're exposing themselves. So I don't know exactly what you want to touch on today, but I know we talked in the background that there's a lot going on from MTG and a lot of stuff that Donald Trump's doing. But maybe can you touch on that real quickly, and then we can kind of go into what you want to touch on?
Well, always first and foremost for the true audience and the true listeners out there that are you're seeking information, you're seeking uh you know, I call it discernment. It should be discernment, but a lot of people in the world of chaos, don't truly know what discernment is. The words discernment, truth, facts, those things have been so watered down that you have to go back to a basic, simple formula, structure, operation, which would be a foundation. And so, I get it in a lot of ways, but when you look at the foundation and the subject we're talking about, the topic, everything that brings these podcasts together, everything is always government and military. Now, military is not always used in government situations like this. That's why it is so unique what President Trump is the face of. He's the face of it. He's not the whole operation, meaning the strategies, the tactics, and the plan. All right. The generals, the admirals would have had the plan. They would have asked President Trump, do you want to be the face of this? Now, President Donald John Trump himself, by himself, is also smart, super high intelligent, high IQ. But he was not the plan. He was asked to be part of the plan. And that's why guys like me and a few gals out there that have been in military get so frustrated. And it sounds like we're mad. It sounds like we're, angry sometimes. It sounds that way. It's perception. I get it. But we're that way because our nation was founded in the middle of a war by people who established a military first. So therefore you need to know military first. You need to know military personnel first, the ones that knows what's going on. Now, not a lot of veterans do. There's a few out there that don't know what's going on, but there's a lot more that do than don't, on both sides of the aisle. So, especially if you're a civilian, then you need to be seeking that first. Also, the whole point of this operation was not just to drain what you think is the swamp, but also all the good guys and gals that know what the swamp actually is, the whole swamp. It's also journalism, broadcast, podcasters, all that. And internet got so big, same thing with government. Government got so big, it got rampant. Internet's been this way. Everybody who has a mouth and moving, flapping lips thinks they know something just because they read something that was already in the internet, on the internet. Who put it there? See, no one ever wants to think about that. So a lot of people out there regurgitating. I've had people out there that take my stuff and they go, well, it's laws and orders. It's public. Well, you didn't know about it. You didn't think about it. You didn't know where to find it before. Then I've had people go, well, I've shared your posts. I've so many times, blah, blah, blah. And then you want to turn on me. And I'm like, you're not an operator. You're not a veteran. You don't have a badge. You don't have credentials. You're a civilian doing what you're supposed to be doing. But see, a lot of people get motivated by money. They start seeing them green stamps roll in, and that's what their motivation becomes. And then all of a sudden, they got a trillion links up to say, hey, buy me a coffee, buy me a this, donate to this, and donate to that. You don't see that on my pages. You don't ever see me sharing links to that. So There's a difference in operators and people who are actually a part of it. Doesn't matter. We're all, someone like me is a little bitty peon, but I'm a little part of the notch. And all of us little notches and middle notches and higher notches all notch together. All right. So there are people who are in certain positions for those of us that are know those who ain't. All right. And also we can tell by their verbiage and their context and the delivery and what they're talking about and how they're presenting it. All right. And we know their intent and their motives. And that's why guys like me and gals out there don't give a dang what you think about us. Don't care if we're harsh, hurt your feelings and step on your toes. You know, it does. That's what we're here for. Honesty is not telling you what you want to hear. It's always telling you what you need to hear. And so there's this, and it's a military. No, you don't want military always stepping in. No, you sure don't. Because then if you get the bad guys in control on that aspect of things and they did turn on the people, I can tell you right now that 99% of America ain't ready for that, because you got your libtards over there who definitely don't believe in guns and ammo and stockpiling. They're the ones, they'd be easy to take out. All right. And then you got your softies over on the Republican conservative side. They're easy to find because they're arguing with each other. They're so busy arguing with each other, they're easy to pick out and go, well, there's two knuckleheads arguing over flat earth and round earth right there. They're easy to identify. There they are. So, boom, lasso them up. So, see, if there ever was bad guys that got in on the military and got control of the equipment, the aircraft, the ships, and that, it would be a no-brainer how ugly that would turn. So that's why Americans do have to realize, how did Congress get there? How did law enforcement get their authority? We deem that. But too many people put too much trust into that as well, and it became what we have today. That's why we had to have this operation. But we still have to have an operation. We still have to have it drag out, twiddle your thumbs, because at the moment that the president and or the Congress said, all right, do this, do this, do this, do this, do that, and went in there and just fixed, then guess what people would do? It'd be like a calf on a tit. It wouldn't want to come off the tit. All right, that's farmers talk, but it's a true talk. If you just went in there and you fixed everything, then everybody would expect that to happen all the time, and no one would ever pull their weight with the infrastructure we have now. Now, I'm an old school person. I wish we could go back to the 1800s. I'd still keep central air and heat because I'm not going to freeze my rear end off or burn up anymore. But it would be cool to go back to that time period when we didn't have any internet and we didn't have anything like that. We went back to old school, looking each other in the eye. You want to say something about me? Say it to my face. All right. And if I square you up and think I can whoop your butt, then be willing to take your butt whooping. Right? That's what America should look like. And it didn't get to that. We're so lazy. We have so much technology now. We're the laziest nation in the world with technology. But then people want to argue simple laws and orders. Simple laws and orders. And we have to have them, because if we don't, then again, Barney Fife is going to be walking around with this little pistol and this one little bullet. And he's going to use that one little bullet a lot more, because he won't have an Andy there to tell him, Barney, put that gun away. We don't need that gun. Not right now. Put it away. Put your bullet up. All right. So you got to look at that always. And every single day you wake up, you have to have a solid foundation on that. And then when you have a solid foundation, you'll be able to confidently identify who is and who ain't for the greater good of humanity. All right. Now, I don't believe personally in a lot of things out there. Personally, meaning like I don't believe in gay marriage, or I don't believe in gay this or gay that. However, there is a way to live and let live, to let someone be what they are without perversion, without it being infiltrated in the schools, school systems, children, etc. There is a way for a person to live in their household and be gay, and no one bothered them, no one harassed them, no one ridiculed them, none of that. There is a way for that. It's called live and let live. All right. And then when they want to come out, But it's the same thing with anybody else. If you're a, raging Southerner who just loves your 4x4s and your loud pipes on your truck, and you got your shotgun still up in the back glass, there is a time and a place for certain things as well. So everybody has to reciprocate that. And a lot of people still want their icing, their candles, and then you can come to my birthday party only if this, right? It's so much chaos out there still, and it don't have to be. And President Trump said something recently, back in 2020, which that's recent to me, but he said specifically, and a lot of people, obviously it was about COVID during that time period, but you can take the same quote and recategorize it and put a different word in there and apply it to everything. Back then, he said the cure cannot be bigger than the problem. Well, take the word cure out of the way, put the word resolution in there. We have a problem in the United States of America. All right. It was a swamp. Well, the resolution cannot be bigger than the problem. And I find it to this day, it's so funny. We get emails and messages, and I'd say probably 25 to 30%, which is a good, decent number of those people, think they know more than me, think they know more than President Trump, think they know more than the generals, think they know more than the admirals. All right, you may be a smart cookie out there. You just might be, but why are you where you are? All right. So the attitudes we have out there's a lot of attitudes. Just belligerent daily. Just want to fight. Just want to argue. Just want to cause. Just like people who call military laws, military orders, military strategies, military tactics, military regulations, military customs conspiracy theories. Now, you don't have to like them, but they don't make them a conspiracy theory. And it definitely don't make them hogwash or bullcrap and all the other things people say out there. None of what I talk about can be debunked because it's all currently invoked. They're invoked. They can't be debunked because they're invoked laws and orders. You don't have to like them. Or when you hear people out there say, Derek Johnson's a liar. Well, ladies, you know this better than anybody. A man can be 100% wrong about anything or something, but that don't make him a liar. That terminology normally is a indicator that they are deep state most of the time. If they're not deep state, then they're a moron. All right. So it's one or the other, because laws and orders are not conspiracy theories, but they also aren't, they can't be debunked. They are in law for a reason. And then the president comes in and does these things called executive orders. Article 2, executive branch, presidential order. So you don't have to like them, and you could hate every single thing, but it don't mean it's a lie. It just means you don't like it, or the person don't like it. But it can't be debunked. It's not hogwash. So the people out there that call themselves Republicans probably really aren't, or conservatives or patriots, they probably really aren't, unless they have some kind of ulterior motive and they're just trying to flip people over and whatever. But there's only one blueprint you need, and it's on President Trump's ball cap, and it's the 45-47. And I've been saying this. I'm not the only one, but we've been saying it. The military panel that I'm on, John Michael Chambers, we do a military panel once a month. And we've been telling people over and over that it's a military operation first. You need military personnel who knows what's going on first. And then also it's a strategic operation. The 45-47 is pre-planned. That means everything you're seeing was already planned, every aspect. And that's why I kept telling people, be careful what your gut thinks you think you know. All right. Now you could be, accurate, but you also could be getting lucky because you're not a part of the operation, not the actual strategic part of it. You're witnessing it and you got a front row seat for it, but you're not a part of that operation. You're not a part of the fabric and the grain of the actual strategic plan itself, because that plan was already put together, presented to President Trump, said, do you want to be the face of it? And then people along the way, lower level hanging fruit, someone like me would be lower level, meaning I wasn't up on their level way back when it was presented. But people like me, and there's a bunch of people like me that are external, meaning like we're not internal military anymore, but we were given an opportunity. And there's a bunch of those everywhere. And we don't all know each other, but we can identify each other when we're around each other because of verbiage and certain things, intricacies that I always talk about. All right. But it's the same thing. If you're a good person, a lot of you are good people, right? You're good Americans. You're good people. You're good parents. You're good, grandparents. You're good something, right? So what made you good all these years? You had to want to be. You had to want to have a discipline, a structure, a foundation. You had to want to do unto others. You had to do certain things in your life to get to where you are. So it's no different. It's just that people know more sometimes or have better skill sets than others, and that's not a knock on anyone who don't. It just means that you're where you're supposed to be and where we're supposed to be. It's just the way life is. I guarantee you there's some things you don't want me doing. Engineering is one of them. All right. You wouldn't want me to try to build a vehicle because you're gonna find out about 2 miles down the road it's gonna fall apart. All right. So there's certain things we all have, that skill sets. So when you go back and you look at the grain and the fabric of that, President Trump was asked to do this. He's the face. He's still brilliant. He's still smart. He's still savvy. He's still 5D chess. But so many people act like this is all President Trump and only President Trump. And that's not a knock on President Trump. It's not whatsoever. He knew this. He knows this. But the generals and the admirals put this together. This is a strategic, massive plan. Now, again, the resolution can't be bigger than the problem. So the problems are all identified, and every aspect you're watching was already pre-planned. Every rollout of everything. But that's why we've been saying be careful, because your gut instinct, you may be accurate because you have a foundation. I don't know who you are out there, so I'm only speaking as a whole in a broad spectrum that I don't know who you are. But if your foundation is my foundation, you're good. But if your foundation is not the blueprint 45-47, you could get lucky and go, oh, yep, so-and-so was bad and President Trump said it. But you're going to be a lot more inaccurate than you are accurate because you're not there to some people yet. But people like MTG, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Now, there's some things that depend on where you are in an operation, but especially this far along, you wouldn't have someone like that normally playing you wouldn't have them be in a good role and then all of a sudden going awry. All right. Not this late in the ball game. Now, it could still spin around, sure, because it's an operation. And I'm not privy to knowing who everybody is that they're flipping or using as a pawn or a fall guy or a fall gal. I know a few of them. And then there's some that we know about that we can't talk about, that we are privy to knowing about. So, but that's just all of us doing what we're supposed to be doing by not saying certain things and letting it play out, but giving you the fabric enough that you can know what's going on and the blueprint of what's going on, because it is public. The blueprint is public. It has to be. But even evil through the past has broadcasted it right in front of you. Things like the swing states. That's the evil corruption of the election rigging that they put right in front of everybody, the swing states. They were predetermined states of what was going to come down to in the election. How did they know that? So they broadcast everything right in front of you. So good also has to be broadcast right in front of you. But you have to have the what? Initiative to read it, study it, apply it, put it together, consume it, live it, breathe it, and be a part of it. Now, because it's a military operation, though, this is not the time period to be criticizing President Trump or anybody for that matter, because it is an operation. So, like, if you're writing to Congress right now, it's falling on deaf ears. Now, that's what you're supposed to do in a normal situation when we're not in a continuity government or a military occupation. That is exactly what but it's falling on deaf ears right now. But kudos to you if you've done that from the standpoint, at least you know what to do. But right now, that's not what's taking place. That's why everything looks different. You don't see C-SPAN doing what C-SPAN used to do. You don't see them on the floor all the time like it used to be. You don't see that. You haven't seen that. You haven't seen any of that, especially if you knew to look for that, a lot of you that did. You knew that, oh man, they got on right now on C-SPAN. Majority of Americans didn't even know what C-SPAN was until recently, if they even still know what it is. So people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, you don't even have to get in depth with the person. When President Trump gives someone a nickname or he calls them a traitor, that's that's hard to come back from. Because if someone called me a traitor, and I know I'm not, but if someone called me that, it don't matter what level they're on, even a lower level, I'm going to want to fight you because I'm not a traitor. And I show it and back it up. But there are people who were around before this operation that people knew about. And you get caught up in names, and you get caught up in their status, and you get caught up in oh, well, I like them, and they say this. And majority of the people that talk like you, look like you, walk like you, and act like you, that have been around before 2017, ain't you? All right. And those are the worst ones that look like you, talk like you, walk like you, act like you. Those are the worst ones because it's easy to identify the ones that ain't you. It's easy to identify the liberals or whatever is opposite of you. That's easy. So it's a lot more difficult and takes a skill set, especially depending on how savvy they are. And that's why President Trump used two different phrases. He said there are stupid people, right? There are smart but stupid people, meaning they're smart. They know what they're doing, but they're stupid. All right. Then there's stupid and evil, right? But the smart, stupid ones are the ones who are the worst ones because they're the ones who can lie to you right to your face, tell you what you want to hear, and never back it up. They're doing it on the surface to you, but you don't see there on the backside because you're not in that system. You're not a part of that operation or that fabric or that grain or whatever it is that they're doing. You're not a part of that other side. You're just seeing the surface. Well, 94% of Americans are not what? Veterans. So look how many people in the military versus those who aren't. And those who aren't seeing what? You're not seeing the daily ins and outs of every battalion out there, brigade out there, battery out there, unit out there. Most of you didn't even know the words battalion, brigade. That's not a knock on you, but it's just showing that that's just military law. Then you get to Congress. Then you get to your federal level when they're at when they're on Capitol Hills, they call it. Then you're not in the daily processes when they're in their states, the senators, and then the congressmen and women. You're not the U.S. ones. Then you're not even in their chambers with your state senators and your state representatives. So see, there's so much stuff that Americans have no clue about, whining and complaining and griping, and have no idea how any of it works. And that's how so many congressmen and women, they just laughed at you, scoffed you off. They don't care if you cuss at them, yell at them, because all they got to do is put up with you for that moment. They're either walking through the airport or walking to their vehicle or whatever it is, and that's it. Then boop, man, that moron. Man, got rid of that moron. Well, you could have actually been a smart person, but because you perceived yourself and made yourself look like a moron, because you cannot quote laws, orders, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But see, one person can't change it. Two people can't. Three people. It takes a multitude to do so. And everybody has to be on the same page. It's the same thing with football or anything else out there, even when it's not rigged. But even then, just take the concept of a game like football. You got a lot of fans who know what a touchdown is, but most fans don't have a clue about the X's and O's, the plays, the routes, the protection, the blocking, etc. And don't want to hear about it. So it's like, yeah, your team could get their butt whooped. All right. But then someone who knows the X's and O's can go, well, not only did we have turnovers, but also this here and this here and this here. Fans are like, oh, they should have threw the ball here. They should have run the ball here. And you're like, oh my God. All you know is throw and run. Well, what are the two things that the way you score in football? Running and passing. I mean, it's like, a vehicle saying, oh, well, my vehicle has wheels on it. Well, I don't think it's supposed to, you know? So little things like that. So Marjorie Taylor Greene and all these, Steve Bannon, great example. Steve Bannon, President Trump recently was roasting Chris Christie, calling him sloppy Chris Christie. And what were majority of X people doing on X, Republicans on X, hammering Chris Christie, and Facebook, hammering Chris Christie, in the comment boxes, hammering Chris Christie. How is it that the same people who can listen to the commander hammer Chris Christie, calling him sloppy Chris Christie, the same majority of people follow Steve Bannon to this day with the same nickname President Trump gave him? That is outright hypocrisy. That's hypocrisy and bigotry at its finest. There is no foundation in that. There's no principle in that. When the president himself gives one the same nickname as the other, and people follow and support one and then trash the other. And President Trump has separated from both of them. That's the stuff that baffles. You don't even have to be a veteran. You don't have to be an operator. You don't have to be secret military. You don't have to be anything to just go, look, simple principle. If you had the same nickname as me and it was a cool nickname like Coolio, what's up, Coolio? You know, and it was someone from your hometown who was a hero or something like that. And they're like, what's up, Coolio? How you doing, Coolio? Well, there you go. And then you had the same nickname and they liked you. That means, hey, they like you too. They call you Coolio, right? They like you too. They like me. They like you. But then what if I had a bad nickname and they had one? Well, shouldn't it be reciprocal? So see, so many Americans are not even following what President Trump is supposed to do. When he does the famous point, when he's pointing people out, he's got his finger pointing at them and smiling. That means this guy, this girl, this one, that one. It's a sting operation. The whole thing's been that. But you're on the latter part of it now. You're on the latter part of it. And President Trump today shared a photo, and it looked like Tommy Boy. Anybody who's ever seen that movie with Chris Farley. All right. And it's like he's squatted down and the fat guy in a little coat, like that imagery, right? And he squatted down and it looks like he's about to rip the jacket off. And he's like, for the love of God, arrest somebody. Now that is for your typical Republicans, typical conservatives, typical rhinos out there. The rhinos that are still sitting on the fence going, I was a never Trumper, but I don't know. I ain't seen anything yet. No one's been arrested yet. Nothing's going to change until people are arrested. That attitude are the people who want everything done for them on their time, their standard. And then when it's done, will they be appreciative of it? Some will, sure. But most people won't even look back, see everything that every man and woman went through to set all this up, to operate through it and get rid of these people in a lawful manner, but also the law enforcement and the military boots on the ground that had to do it, and also in the tunnels, rescuing the children, rescuing the women, rescuing all the trafficking. A lot of those people out of that portion will not see that or respect that or have an appreciation for it. They just want arrest be done. Well, if you're a patriot, a true patriot, everybody wants arrest to be made. That should be a no-brainer. That is the wheels on the vehicle. That's a no-brainer. If I'm buying a vehicle, it better have tires on it. I mean, what would be the point? That makes no sense whatsoever. So sure, you should want arrest. Absolutely. That's what we're going to do to flip this nation around and also re-show and reestablish that, hey, this is what you get for treason. This is what you get for crimes against humanity. This is what you get for money laundering. This is what you get for insider trade. And we have to reestablish that. Absolutely. But while we're getting there, every American should be knowing their basic core operations and functions of the three branches of government and also military. At this point in history, Everyone should be learning military, whether you were a military or not. You should know it. You should at least know the basic core principles, core functions, and operations as a whole from the top to the bottom as much as you can. And so, you know, this is so easy. And I wish it was easy for everybody out there. Like, I wish I could just download everything out of my brain and upload it in yours and have that appreciation and everything. But it's so easy if people just simplify it and think of President Trump's quote and then just change the word out of it. Put the resolution cannot be bigger than the problem. All right. The resolution this time had to be military. And it's really freaking awesome what they did. They took every single corporate systematic law and they have used it against them. Every aspect of it. So that's why I wanted to kind of ramble a little bit to beginning, because I've been seeing a lot out there. There's a certain group and entities out there that are trying to stir up ground on one thing, and I'm just going to cover it really quick to show you something else that just recently took place that ties in to President Trump's tweet today about arrest and Pam Bondi, and they have everything. Well, they have everything. Well, what did he tell you in 2020? We have it all. We've caught them all. Well, it's a process. And then last Monday, the last trial. See, no one's even heard of these trials. They've been strategically under the radar on purpose because those are not the focus, which means you're about to see what you want to see. When that's not the focus about the Russiagate trials on the other side of the spectrum, then that tells you what's coming, what President Trump was sharing just a couple months ago. He reshared it again. Remember, all roads lead to Obama. Then he did the artificial intelligence video of Obama being arrested, right? All these things, right? Then today he shares this, for the love of God, arrest somebody. He's talking about Christopher Wray and all these other people, right? So they're keeping that on the forefront. And they're showing people on the forefront. So now watch this. I've been seeing and hearing, and we had this question on the panel. I think it was two months ago. We had the question, can civilians be tried in military courts? And there's certain groups of people out there that are trying to say no, and that's against this and against the law. And well, guess what? You might probably want to know the law. You probably want to know the law. So to show you the 45-47 and make this as simple and quick as possible, I was doing this on a podcast last night. When President Trump rolled down the escalator, June the 16th, 2015, 4 days before that, if you're Spanish out there, you struggle with English, uno, dos, tres, cuatro, all right? 4 days before President Trump rolled down the escalator, a brand new law of war manual was reissued. Federal and military attorneys took the law of war manuals from Germany, the United Kingdom, Canada, and Australia. Plus, they took the Lieber Code of 1863, the Geneva Conventions, the Hague Conventions, and the Nuremberg trials. They took all the core strengths of all those, combined them, and reissued a new law of war manual for whom? The United States of America. Military. Law of War Manual. Now think about what happened in history with Germany. Germany alone should tell you one thing. 2, a lot of Americans don't even know this. You'll have to go and research it. This is not this podcast. But if you ever wonder why Australians sound like they're from Great Britain, you probably want to understand the history behind that. So, law of war manuals from Germany, United Kingdom, Australia, and Canada. Canada, the crown, right? What did everything go back under? The crown, all right? The Crown Corporation, as we talk about. Real simple stuff here. Then you take the Nuremberg trials, the Geneva Conventions, Hague Conventions, and Lieber Code of 1863, which would have been obviously Civil War related. Well, then what movie was just put out about 10 days ago? about the Nuremberg trials? What are they trying to tell people? What are they trying to get people ready for? Okay, so take that. All right, pause for a moment in a good way. All right, that was President Trump. The law war manual 4 days before President Trump rolls down the escalator. Then the next year, February 2016, Obama was somewhere and he said, we're going to shut down Guantanamo Bay. President Trump was somewhere same day and he heard about it, quote unquote, all pre-planned, all strategic. This was showing you what was coming. That was all pre-planned, all strategic. President Trump was in a speech. He said, oh, and by the way, someone said something today that the Guantanamo Bay Gitmo, the spa, was going to be shut down. No, it's not. Okay, so from February 2016, Obama and Congress would have had from February to January the 20th, 2017 at 11:59 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to shut down Guantanamo Bay. They did not do so. President Trump didn't reissue a revocation executive order until 2018, January the 30th, 2018. He revoked Obama's portion that was going to shut it down with his executive order 13823. How come, quote unquote, Joe did not revocate that executive order? From 2021 to 2025, President Trump's executive order for Guantanamo Bay to keep it open is still intact as we speak to this day. That's February 2016. April 2016. All of a sudden, after all these years from 1966, how old were some of you? Be honest. 1966, Special Operations Resistance Pyramid. In the Special Operations Unconventional Warfare Pocket Guide in 1966, after JFK had said that guerrilla warfare needed to be one of the key components of our military because of what our enemies were doing, we needed to be in control of that. What did Special Operations do? They put in this pyramid. And in that pyramid, it had the word agitation in 1966. And all of a sudden, in April of 2016, all of a sudden, when they put this publication out, the word changed from agitation to assassination, and with a phrase behind it. 3 phrases that are very key with every quote-unquote assassination attempt and or what you thought was an assassination that you've seen in the last 9.5 years. To the T of the phrase in it, and it's all military. May 2016, out of nowhere, the more liberal Supreme Court, out of nowhere, clarified in the Military Justice Act that military courts and federal courts are separate. Why would a more liberal Supreme Court, out of nowhere, right before President Donald John Trump, the one they said he was never going to be president, all the liberal retards out there and all the liberal media, everybody, he ain't going to be president, never, never, never. Remember all that? So from May to November, just right before that, the more liberal Supreme Court with Ginsburg and all those just said, hey, we need to clarify that the military courts and federal are separate. For what reason, people? Woo! Now put all those together. Now fast forward. Didn't we just go through a 42-day shutdown? That's what they put the number at, 42 days. And it was for a continuing resolution. Continuing resolution. Continuing resolution. Did you hear the word continue in there? Does that have anything to do with continuity, perhaps? Continuing, continuity? Yes, it does. All right. So that's why you got to know we've been in a military operation. We've been in a military occupation. We're an occupied country. President Trump told you this. Why is President Trump using law of war manual terms to average everyday Americans who don't know anything about the 3 branches of government, much less the military? Occupied territory, white flag of surrender, which is called white white flag of truce negotiations in the law of war manual. But white flag of surrender, because when you combine a white flag of truce and a capitulation, that's called an unconditional full surrender. So why is the mainstream media and President Donald John Trump using terms occupied territory, white flag of surrender, capitulation, government in exile, puppet government? Why are they using terms that are nothing to do with the federal government? They are all straight out of the law of war manual. And guess what? Puppet government would have been what you witnessed with Joe. I want to be funny and slang, but some people can't handle it, but you'll get over it. Joe and the Hoettes, for everybody who thought that was real, all right? Everybody who thought that was real, that was a puppet government, 2021 to 2025. President Trump was the government in exile, and he just validated this a month and a half ago with the Turkish president 3 different times. He said, while I was in exile, he remained my friend. While I was in exile. And he makes it so obvious. It's not like he's saying, yeah, I was just chilling over there in exile. Yeah, I had me a beer, cold beer. And no, he says it so he says it with emphasis. While I was in exile, like, hey, people, I can't broadcast this anymore to you. While I was in exile, he puts emphasis on the word. And so he said that. So that would have been what President Trump was. Government. Ladies and gentlemen, puppet government and occupied territory are in the same chapter in the law of war manual. Guess what it is? Military occupation. Now, let me read something to you. I got it all pulled up here because I want to read it word for word, even though I can typically quote it, but I'm trying to read fast to save time because I know Jenny has some other questions. So I'm just read this really quick. Yes, civilians can be tried in military courts under specific exceptional circumstances. This can occur if they are serving with, employed by, or accompanying the armed forces, or under situations like martial law where civilian authority is suspended. Crimes such as treason or aiding the enemy may fall under this jurisdiction. All right, I'm going to read some more here really quick. Now, in the Uniform Code of Military Justice, now, veterans out there, if you're a active duty veteran or a reserve component, all right, we raised our right hand active duty under Title 10, Section 502. If you were National Guard, you raised your right hand under Title 32, but it's the same exact oath. You said the same words, it was just a different title. But you raised your right hand and you said, I do solemnly swear to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I will obey the orders of the president and the officers appointed over me according to what? Regulations and the Uniform Code of Military Justice, which is military law. You cannot have one portion of Title 10 or Title 32 without the other. You either believe in all of it or none of it. And if you believe in none of it, you're a traitor and you're an enemy of the Republic. That is why foreign and domestic was put in the oath in 1862. We weren't in Iraq and Afghanistan and Syria and Bosnia and Kosovo and Somalia and Egypt and all these places. We weren't there in 1862. It was called an ironclad oath. Abraham Lincoln, they wanted people to absolutely take an ironclad oath that they would defend the Republic. And even the Confederate states back then, and I'm from the Confederate state, right? Even they were going against the Republic. That's why the Civil War had a lot more to do with other things than it did slavery. And so many people misconstrue that. So, ironclad oath. When you took that oath, this right here is jsc.defense.gov. All right, and I'll post it later. I've been meaning to post it, but bullet point 10, bullet point 11, bullet point 12 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, Article 2, Section 802 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Listen to what it says. In a time of declared war or contingency operation, persons serving with or accompanying an armed force in the field. Number 11, subject to any treaty or agreement to which the United States is or may be a party, or to any accepted rule of international law, persons serving with, employed by, or accompanying the armed forces outside the United States and outside the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Virgin Islands. Number 12, subject to any treaty or agreement to which the United States is or may be a party, or to any accepted rule of international law, persons within an area leased by or otherwise reserved or acquired for the use of the United States, which is under control of the Secretary concerned, and which is outside the United States and outside the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Virgin Islands. Now, there's a lot to unpack there, and I'm going to try to do it as fast as possible. In a time of declared war or contingency operation, there's a double whammy right there. We're in a declared war in a different kind of manner. President Trump tells you every day in certain press conferences, he uses terms that are straight up law war manual. And then he said it last year, right before this time last year, right before the election, he was saying, we're an occupied country. We will soon no longer be an occupied country. The Great Liberation starts on November the 5th, and the Great Restoration starts on January the 20th. Starts. He didn't say it was finished. He said it starts, which means we're still in that restoration process, meaning we're restoring laws and orders. And he said that specifically. This continuing resolution, guess what was passed for this continuing resolution? Guess what was put out there? And I'll have to go find it. I found it the other day. I'll have to post it. A contingency operation plan to pay the military while the government was shut down. You cannot have any more proof. I won't even have to break down number 11 and number 12. President Trump just said the other day, I don't have to declare a war with Venezuela. You know why he doesn't have to, ladies and gentlemen? Because if you knew what you're supposed to know, you know that like a broken record, you know what I'm about to say, like a beating a dead horse here. Title 50, Chapter 33, Section 1550. That is when a Democrat-controlled House and a Republican-controlled Senate put an entry from the National Defense Authorization Act, which means it's temporary, and it tells you in Section 1550 that it's temporary. It tells you in the War Powers Resolution Act that it's temporary, meaning not for future presidents, which means also this operation is what? Strategic. Special operation. Once in a lifetime. And then you would also know what it says in the bottom of Chapter 33, Section 1550. Oh, quote unquote, Joe, for the average schmuck out there who don't know all the laws and orders, but for record's sake and proclamation's sake, recording's sake, quote unquote, Joe relinquished all authority to the Secretary of then Defense, now War. What did number 12 just say? Subject to any treaty, it says reserved or acquired for the use of the United States, which is under the control of the Secretary concerned. And what did President Trump do in Executive Order 13919, April the 30th, 2020, in the first 180 days of the clause of Section 1550? He gave equal authority to the Secretary of Defense, now Secretary of War, to federalize selected reserve components to active duty. And right before that, President Trump federalized 1 million reserve components to active duty. They all tie in, ladies and gentlemen. So declared war, House, Democrat House, Republican Senate, NDAA of 2020. That Section 1550 is in that NDAA 2020, but they recorded it in the War Powers Act for a reason. Everything you're seeing with Venezuela, all the libtards went crazy this week when they announced the Operation Southern Spear to do with Venezuela. Why didn't they go crazy April the 1st, 2020, whenever the Southern Command, the same Southern Command, launched the enhanced counter-narcotics operation? Guess what that is? That's your operation against Venezuela. That's when it was launched. Operation Southern Spear is not the launching of the attacks on Venezuela. This is back in April the 1st, 2020. Guess what executive order that is? 13773. Guess when that was issued? 2017. So how come all these executive orders that are operating to this day made it through 2021 to 2025? If we're going to play devil's advocate in a fun way here, then we need to laugh at the libtards in a fun way, and then also get on their side and say, hey, just hear me out. Shouldn't you be more pissed at your people? Because I know you don't know anything about laws and orders, but let me break down what a law is and what an order does. The law is this and an order is this. And then here's what an executive order does, and here's what a national emergency does. And did you not know that a continuity government was invoked, and it was your dude who, quote unquote, partially revoked it on the last 24-hour day of presidency? Not the first 24-hour day, the last 24-hour day. Like you can't get any more. So it's like saying this. Some of you heard me say it, but I like to do it over and over again. It'd be like, so the 8 executive orders with 8 national emergencies that quote unquote Joe continued to President Trump's from 2017 to 2021. They're deporting illegal migrants. That's one of the executive orders. One of them is terminating mainstream media contracts, organizations. It don't matter what it is. It's all applies. All right, enforcing DOGE. All right, taking the Panama Canal back. All right. I mean, we can sit here and keep naming things, but those things alone are big enough. Election interference. So, election interference, executive order. Why would quote unquote Joe have the National Guard cybersecurity teams out at the polls in 2022 and 2024 under the same Title 32 federalization presidential call-up of President Trump's in 2018? Quote unquote Joe didn't have a Title 32 order in place. The cybersecurity teams that were tracking all the data and the real-time votes and the real numbers that will tell exactly how many numbers voted in 2018, 20, 22, and 24? Military, National Guard, all lawful, all under a Title 32 federalization presidential call-up. So why would quote unquote Joe have the same Title 32 order? He didn't have his own order. For the people that thought he was real, he didn't have his own Title 32. Those soldiers were operating under President Trump's Title 32 call-up from 2018. Why would quote unquote Joe do that? Come on, people. So that, now take that and put all of those 8 together. This is what it would look like. If you thought Joe and the Ho and the Hoettes and all them were real, this is what it would look like. Oh, yeah, wait. President Trump, congratulations on number 47. Yeah, we saw you meet 12 foreign leaders 13 different times from April to December 2024. We didn't invoke the Logan Act on you because, we're just peacemakers and whatever else. But we have a plan to call you a lot of names. And then also we didn't invoke the Logan Act and also other things on you for this as well when you were meeting here and here. We also didn't invoke anything to do with election interference, Title 18 federal and criminal procedures on you for national security breach of you standing at the border in Texas with the governor and the adjutant general. While Americans thought I was a sitting president, you were down there as the quote unquote former president and making them think that, no, they didn't think that. They didn't know. They had no clue. So see that, then you take the 8 executive orders doing all of what they're doing that President Trump issued, enforcing DOGE, deporting migrants, terminating mainstream media. All here you go, President Trump. Big box and red giant bow. Here's all your executive orders. We didn't touch your Title 10. We didn't touch your Title 32. We didn't terminate anything to do with the military because we didn't even have our names on anything military while the troops were still at the border down here. Nope. here you go, be a giant red boat. And by the way, we're going to call you a pedophile. We're going to call you a king. We're going to call you a fascist, a Nazi, and all these other things, a dictator. We're going to say you're a threat to this and all that. That's what you're saying. If you still, anyone out there that still believes that Joe was real, Joe was president, all this is real, all this is real time, that's what you're agreeing to. That they damn themselves. That they continued all these things that's going to actually prosecute them, hang them, and execute them. You don't want to be that dumb, ladies and gentlemen. All right. And I don't know who you are out there. I don't even see hardly any names right now. I'm not even looking at the screen. But you don't want to be that dumb. You don't want to look like a liberal. So don't act like it. Learn the simplicities of this. Because this right here tells you that, yes, most certainly, civilians can be tried in military courts under a declaration of war, martial law, contingency operation, etc. You have all the evidence of that. And guess who tells you? Your commander. I reiterate it and I back it up and I show you where he says it and I show you where it is in laws and orders. But the man himself tells you and he's proclamated it. Now, what puts the cherry on top of all this? What puts the icing on the cake or whatever you want to look at it? Even more so for the people out there, it tells you that's not true. Oh, the law. They don't know the law. Tell them, quote it then. Quote the law. Quote where the law says that civilians cannot be tried in military court. Quote the law. That's all you got to do, people. If they say the law said, quote the law then. Quote it. All right? Quote it. So not only does the Uniform Code of Military Justice, Article 2, Section 802, most definitely tell you that, yes, we can put civilians in military courts, especially for treason and crimes against humanity. Well, now go apply when it said territories, leased, accompanying, or all these things. Well, Benghazi, that's outside of the United States of America. That's also outside of Guam, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands, Libya, Benghazi. And guess whose name is not in the War Powers Resolution Act? Obama. So guess who that takes out? Obama and who? His whole administration that knew about the operations of Libya, Benghazi. Where was Osama bin Laden, quote unquote, supposedly? Pakistan. What were Navy SEALs doing in Pakistan? Under whose order? Obama. He wasn't. They weren't in Afghanistan. Whose name is not in the War Powers Resolution Act? Obama. Why does President Trump say all roads lead to Obama? Because they do. It's real simple. The resolution is not bigger than the problem. Now watch this. This is even hilarious. It's awesome, hilarious for the people out there saying, "Oh, show the law say that." They don't even know the law. The Uniform Code of Military Justice tells you, and guess what else tells you? Article 64 and 66 of the Geneva Conventions tells you, yes, most certainly, that civilians can be tried in military courts. So what was the law war manual reissued for? Because military and federal attorneys took the strengths of the law war manual from Germany, Canada, Australia, and United Kingdom, and then also the strengths of the Nuremberg trials, the Hague Conventions, Libra Code, and what? The Geneva Conventions. And what does this Article 66 specifically say? That yes, the article states that the occupying power may hand over accused individuals to its properly constituted non-political military courts. You know what that also equates to, ladies and gentlemen, if you love slang and if you love smartassery like President Trump, when you have all the answers, you know what that equates to? Sit your ass down and shut up. That's what that stands for. So when anyone tells you that, no, it can't, then the best way for you to know that most certainly it can, and also if you're someone who's confident or you desire to be a pillar in your friends, your family, your neighborhood, your community, your town, your county, your city, your state, or even federal if you get called up to that, then it requires what? Knowing every aspect of the topic, the subject, the operation. All right. And then it just helps if you do have a photographic memory. It does help, but you don't have to have that. All you need is the blueprint. And every American should know this stuff because this is the core fabric grain. Everything's been done lawfully. There's no loopholes. That's why it had to be drug out, but it also had to be drug out for multiple reasons. 1, lawful. 2, no loopholes. 3, plug the loopholes if there were to begin with created by the deep state. Then you go back, plug them. You beat them at their own game, and then you plug it. That way there's no loophole when you get done with it, and you correct the issue, and you correct the problem. Then you had to find people to replace these morons. You have to find people who are passionate, knowledgeable, skilled, who cannot be bought and cannot be compromised. So yeah, you're going to have things in society. You all know it. You're all adults, most of you. There shouldn't be any young people in here, but if you're 17, 18, glad you're here. You're the pillar for sure. But, most of you are adults that listen. So, there's people in life that they think they are and they ain't. All right. But, one bad day don't mean they have a bad life. One mistake don't mean that you throw them to the wolves. It just depends. We have a lot of things in life that goes, it just depends. But like President Trump said with Congress, what they would do is take someone from like HR, you do this in HR and then, they fired you there. They'd take a fired person from one department and put them completely in a different department. No skill set whatsoever. They just liked them or they were what? They were for clean house. They didn't say, hey, I like you. You're a good person. You make good cookies for Thanksgiving, but guess what? You suck at policy. You're fired, right? This ain't for you. Go take up something else. So many people get offended over the fact that we got to bring back constructive criticism and things of that nature back to everything, every aspect of life. And then don't get offended. If you're getting offended, it's because you allowed it to happen. If you're getting upset, you allowed it to happen. Now, there's cases where I had someone follow me around for about 3 years calling me a liar. Well, my mother has a story, if I may really quick, where I was about 4 years old. I was in daycare, and this kid came up and took my toy. Well, the daycare teacher said I went over to the toy box, got another toy out. Well, that kid came and took that toy. I didn't do anything. I went back to the toy box, got another toy, played with that toy. Same kid came over there and took that. She said that time I gave that kid a certain look, but I didn't do anything. I went back to the toy box. I got another toy, third toy. Kid come back, try to take the third toy. Guess what Derek Johnson did? I took that toy and I whacked his ass right over the top of the head with it. All right. And guess what the teacher back then didn't do? Didn't punish me. She sat there and witnessed that kid harassed me. That kid followed me around. And then that kid pushed me to do what? React. Right? I did what I was supposed to do the first 2 times. But the third time, the little dude got his ass tore up. Right? So that's what people out there, sometimes you just got to kick a little rear end. Sometimes you do. You just have to. All right. But what happened with Congress is people let it happen and happen and happen and no repercussion and no consequences of anything. And slap on the wrist, slap on the wrist, slap on the wrist, slap on the wrist, no punishment. So, I had someone, like I said, follow me around for like 3 years, calling me a liar. Well, I could be 100% wrong. I could be 1% to 100% wrong on certain things. Absolutely. Because I'm human with anything in life. But that don't make you a liar. See? So that person got a butt chewing. All right. And it's out there for the whole world to hear because the people didn't take the podcast down. And that's fine. I don't care. You look like an idiot. You should be treated like one. All right. And that's why we have to get back to that. We have to get back to where we just absolutely react sometimes to some people. And like President Trump said, sometimes you just have to. You just have to. And so many people are scared to stand up. Don't be. Do not be scared to stand up. Who's going to cancel you? What's going to cancel you? If you can eat, sleep, and find the joy in your life and have shelter, water, and food, that's you got everything you need. It may not be what you want, but you got everything you need. All right. So many people are just scared. Don't be scared. Right. We're winning this thing. Every aspect of it's pre-planned. So it don't mean sit back on your thumb either. No.
Oh,
So
we're losing you.
Well, I don't know how.
Oh, you're coming in clear now. You're kind of like, you're starting to kind of rubber band, but keep going. You're doing good.
Well, so that's basically the gist of everything. I mean, I just wish people could understand how so strategically pre-planned this whole thing is. So if something rolls out next week and we're not there to a trial yet, or we're not to an arrest yet, but if it's another figure, public figure that you thought was good but wasn't, it was pre-planned. Every aspect of this is. And that's why a lot of you, if you subscribe to President Trump's, like the regular, the text they send, they'll send like 100 a day, right? And it'll say, oh, they're doing this or that. But the next one is going, hey, I'm sending you a free ball cap, blah, blah, blah. Ladies and gentlemen, if the world was falling on the president or anything, he wouldn't be saying, hey, I'm sending you a free poster, by the way. It wouldn't be like that, right? It's just but they have to be average to the average person to get the average person involved in average thinking first and then elevate. So, I wish it was more. We said this other day. I think it was all of us that said it on the military panel. I mean, you talking about full bird colonel and colonels sitting there, special operations colonels. We all are privy to certain things, and we're not privy to some other things. And then we're all in our lane doing what we've been tasked to do. So, but if it were just some of us, sure, heck yeah, it'd be a lot more visual. Doggone right. That's why I tell people, don't vote for Derek Johnson if you see me there. If you just said anything about Epstein, I would deport you. I would deport you just for saying the word Epstein or Epstein files. You know why? Because that's drama. One person on the planet that's linked to trafficking. Where were all of the people before? There are over 300,000 children in the United States alone trafficked in the United States alone. All right. So yearly, maybe more, but just by the numbers, because it's such a hidden data out there, but just on a minimum, 300,000 a year. Where were all of the outrage before Epstein? See, that's the stuff we've got to clean out in America. All this drama and all this propaganda over one person. It's the same thing when they would parade around O.J. Simpson or Casey Anthony. Ain't nobody on the planet wanted that baby dead except that mother who went out and partied for a month and didn't know where her baby was. That's the shit we've got to clean up in America. That's the stuff we got to talk about. They made that such a big court, all over, smeared the mom, smeared the dad, all this, made for money. That was the judicial system of that era. O.J. Simpson, same thing. Oh, Mr. All-American, Mr. Super Bowl, all this other stuff. Nobody else would have wanted his wife dead. Nobody. And there was so much evidence, but what happened? Money, 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 and the system. But it's still, at the end of the day, whether it is a real trial or not in America, guess what we got to do? They all have to be the same level. They all have to be the same thing. This whole business of taking one and making it an apple is insane. And that's what people are doing with this Epstein crap. And it's so simple and easy. 3 judges, 2 appointed by Obama and 1 by Clinton, blocked the grand jury files that President Trump said release them way back. And then I pulled up earlier today, and before I could even get it up, I went over to X, and I'll be darned if the liberals aren't already saying it. But I said, you know what? Here's what's going to happen. President Trump said release. The Republican House Oversight had already released, which this is all pre-planned again. But for the people out there, just love them some drama. The Republican Oversight already released it. This past week, we had patriots and everybody going, oh, no, oh, gosh. Ladies and gentlemen, it's so simple. The female that they were using, the libtards and the Democrats, the female's name was already public. She committed suicide. Her name was already public. Her story was already public. Why did they redact her name? See, that's the stuff right there. If you just knew that simple thing, you'd have been like, these idiots. Don't even waste your time and energy because it's all pre-planned in the first place. But then second, on the flip side of everything, Epstein's first run-in with the law was 2005. So from 2005 to 2016, not a thing. From 2021 to 2025, for the people that thought that was real, not a thing. The person who had the most leverage on anybody would have been Jeffrey Epstein on Donald Trump. When did President Trump announce he was running for presidency? When did he roll down the escalator? In 2015. When did, quote unquote, Jeffrey Epstein, quote unquote, die? So the person with the most leverage on President Trump would have been whom? Epstein. Why didn't he cry like a wolf? He had plenty of opportunity to cry like a wolf. He had plenty of opportunity to get publicity because he was worth billions, plural. It's this freaking simple. Americans love drama. So the Americans who love drama can't also be complaining that they want truth and facts because they can't separate the two. They don't have the discernment because they don't want the discernment because they're living on feelings and emotions. Military operations, special operations, irregular warfare, unconventional warfare, you don't no emotions whatsoever except for passion to wake you up. That's it. And so that's what's been happening the last week. And it's all pre-planned. Every bit of it's pre-planned. Every aspect of it is.
So Derek, thank you for saying that because there's a lot of people that still question a lot of things, and and a lot of people now are coming out and talk. Can you touch a little bit about the sleeper cells, because I get a lot of questions on that. There's a lot of people pushing out the sleeper cells now and them being activated and all this kind of fear stuff. And I would love for you to kind of give your perspective, and we can close it out with that.
You talking about the sleeper cells, like the Muslims, those sleeper cells, or just
well, you hear it, right? So again, so there's a question for you right there. So you hear it, a lot of people talking about, they've imported a lot of people from, Afghanistan, all these different countries, right? And they're being trained by our military, and they're just waiting to be activated, right? So again, I'm not saying that's not happening, but I do believe, Trump has said we caught them all, we have them all. I do believe that, within him saying that, he has to know where these people are, right? Hence all these deportations. And I think it's like up to 2 million, a lot. I read something yesterday on the White House X page the other day. But anyway, I would like for you to touch on that because they're talking about, many people are putting out there that they're going to be activated and we could be seeing many deaths and all this kind of, just the fear mongering. And I would like people to hear from you. I don't necessarily agree with that, but again, hear it from you and other people, just kind of maybe calm some people's nerves, because we don't need the fear. We need people to be calm, because when you're in fear, that's when stupid shit starts happening, right?
Okay, well, this is how you solve that. Real simple. All right, if you painfully were a libtard, all right, I don't want to cast that on some of you out there, but just to play the devil's advocate for a moment, put yourself in the shoes of a libtard. They already think the country's going to hell. They think President Trump's a dictator, a fascist, a Nazi, a pedophile, a king, and all these things. All right. So if you were to just separate for a moment the fact, and it's hard to do so because it's just hard to do so when you know what you know and you're part of the operation, but it's hard to do this. But they already think that the country's going to hell. What are they doing about it? I mean, let's just be honest. Let's just have some fun here. Ladies, forgive me for a moment. All right. All these libtard women dressing up in hoo-ha suits. Your hoo-ha is your little area down there that God created. That's my slang term for it. All right. So I call it your hoo-ha. All right. And so I don't want to see a woman walking around in a hoo-ha suit. All right, period. Even if my windows are up and I'm riding down the road and I can't hear a word they're saying. They could be saying, I love Derek Johnson's music. And I'd be like, I don't want to see that. All right. So, but they're not yelling that. All right. So what are the protests doing? Not a thing. Not a thing. It ain't changing a thing. It's not changing you and your perspective and your knowledge, your intelligence. It's not changing a thing. So they're not doing a thing about it. Also, where we are, this is November 2025. Look how fast this year's gone by, ladies and gentlemen. I cannot believe it's almost Thanksgiving, and we know how fast that turns into Christmas. And then, bam, New Year. Think how fast this year went by. So we're almost to 2000. We're almost to 2026. All right, if President Trump was the threat that they say he is, if President Trump was the king, dictator, think of those words by context. See, a lot of people just hear them, and you hear them so much you don't listen to the context of them. If the liberals thought President Trump was a true dictator and a true king, then guess what that means? They've already lost everything. If we didn't have their best interest. Now, we have their best interest too, and they just don't realize that. They don't realize that yet. They don't realize what the tariffs are doing. They don't realize what the central banks were doing. And they don't realize what was drained, because they're the people whose dear sweet grandma could walk in the living room, sweet, 4'11", like my grandmother, never said a cuss word, never raised her voice. But because they can't identify a wolf in sheep's clothing, they're the kind whose grandmother and or child could be in their living room and could be the absolute pure evil devil monster, and they wouldn't know it, because they don't even have a foundation. They don't even have a vision or an ideology of what they're fighting in. They only fight for what they think is what they're like. They're gay and they want to chop their thing off. That's all they know. They don't know the bigger aspects, the broader, the foundation, the ideologies of our founders, and they don't care. So they're not even trying to change anything. They can't change anything of something they don't even know about. So they're just, that old saying, just firing off. They're just running outside, with an AR-15 or AK-47, just spraying them off in the air, right? Hoping it hits something. All right, meaning with their ideology. So if you think of where we are and you apply that, where are they? The other thing you got to remember is that we've done everything lawfully so far with just the National Guard and the reserve components. The only time we brought active duty in is out in California, and that wasn't a whole lot of active duty. That was your Marine Corps. All right. Now, I love my Army. I do. I don't regret going in the Army. I love every bit of going in the Army. Now, I'm not that guy that sits and bashes the Air Force and the Marine Corps and the Navy and all the Space Force, Coast Guard, just like adamantly about it. We all have our jokes and we have our fun jokes, and that's what it should remain, is the fun jokes we have. But I say this to say, me being Army and loving my Army, all you'd have to do in this nation is activate 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 Marine Corps in every city in this nation. And I'm going to tell you what, the devil dogs will eat. There's an old saying in the South, let that big dog eat, or let her eat. Well, that was talking about trucks, four-wheel drives in the mud. Like when it gets in the mud, they say, let her eat. Well, that means to put it in four-wheel drive and hit that gas. meaning it's going to sling mud and it'll come out. Especially if you're a good driver and you know how to drive in the mud. Let her eat. That's a Southern saying. Let me tell you what, just a few thousand Marine Corps alone, you wouldn't even have to bring the Army out. You wouldn't have to bring just a couple thousand Marine Corps, and they would clean this nation up quick. So that's just your Marine Corps that I'm giving a shout out to. We're not talking about all active duty military who would listen to their commanders. Did you not just see 800 generals and admirals in a building with President Trump? Yep. Okay. Well, you got to apply this. You hear as a civilian, some of you, and this is okay, not bashing you. You hear 800 generals and admirals. You just hear individuals. Every general and admiral has a division under them that could be up to 75,000 soldiers. All right. So do your math. All right. Every rank structure is going to listen to what? Chain of command. But especially when it's a lawful order. We ain't used the active duty yet, except for one little thing. All right. Most of it's been National Guard and reserve components. Now, you hadn't seen the results of that completely yet, some of you, because you just have, it's a bigger piece, right? It's a massive piece. It's a broad spectrum that's going to be shown over time because, you know, the tariffs and the money and your taxes and the IRS and all these things, it has to be in a function. It has to be in a timely manner in another way, because it goes back to what I was saying earlier. You can't just rip the rug out and change everything, because then people would expect that all the time. But we've built up to so many cities and corporations and organizations, and even if you don't like it, and I don't either, I don't necessarily like big corporation either, meaning like always, but because we reached up to that, we have to bring those. If we want that change, we got to bring it all down slowly. Because if you rip the rug out on everything, then we'll have a lot of chaos in another way. So you got to bring it down, bring it back down. The same thing with the federal departments that President Trump's been doing. You got to bring it down, bring it down, bring it down slowly, operationally. So we're only talking about one tiny portion of the military. We're not talking about the rednecks. We're not talking about the cowboys. We're not talking about the bikers out there. All right. We're not talking about the hippies from the 60s and the 70s that still believed in good old America, the baby boomers. All right. We ain't talking about that. You know how much ammo we got in the South alone? You damn sure ain't coming to the South. You don't see them coming down here. You don't see nothing going down here, because why? We put in Alabama and Texas law right now, the only two that I know about. You get in my yard and act like a damn fool, I can shoot you in the yard. You don't even have to be in my house. I don't even have to drag you in the house. Get in my yard and act like a damn fool. All right? Get in my yard and threaten me. All right? You're going to be leaving in a vehicle that you didn't arrive in. That is how Alabama and Texas works. Now, that don't mean we want you to. That don't mean we're inciting anything. That's just saying, hey, if you come to my yard and you incite violence in my yard or whatever it is, try to break in my house, well, I got something for you. All right. And guess what the state of Alabama and the state of Texas says? Yep. We got proof, evidence. Yep. Defends himself. Well, guess what happened out in New Mexico not long ago, or Arizona? It was New Mexico or Arizona, but the farmer out there that shot the migrant coming across, and they dropped the case on him because he said, well, I was defending my territory. What else was I supposed to do? It was either me or him. Well, pretty common sense there. That's what we got to bring back to America. Now, that wasn't that farmer going out and looking for someone. He wasn't like he was perched up waiting for him to jump over the wall or whichever way he got through. It wasn't that. He didn't instigate that. He was defending his turf. So I'm pretty sure if people would just look around and go, wait, if President Trump was what they say he is, like the liberals, they would have already lost their crap. Even the Muslims that are here, they're not going to do anything. They definitely ain't coming to the South either, because we got too many pigs down here. All you got to do is put a couple pigs around them and they're going to run. You don't even have to fire a shot at them. They think, oh, a pig, you got a pig. Whoa, God, no, that's all. They don't even like pigs. So bingo, all you got to do is have a pet pig. Muslim ain't coming around you. All right. Jihadists ain't coming around you. There ain't that many here that people think, even when they were here. So when President Trump says we know where they are, that's already been done. But it's also what they're doing is reestablishing what in America? God, Jesus Christ, and our foundation that our founders established. All right. Now, you can be here and you can be a Buddhist, you can be whatever you want to be. But our nation was not founded on that. Our nation was founded on God and Jesus Christ. And even someone like Thomas Paine, let me just bring this up really quick if I may. Thomas Paine, I put him in my new book, by the way. He wrote an article called Common Sense. It was about 28 pages back then. But let me tell you what I heard one time from a patriot, quote unquote patriot, not a real patriot. Talking about Thomas Paine was an atheist. Did you not listen to Thomas Paine, though? Did you not read what he said back in the day? 1775, 1776, in that region, that era? He was an atheist, but he believed in what the founders believed in. He believed that having a solid foundation on God and spirituality was a good thing as a whole. See, so many people they hear the word like atheist or agnostic, and all of a sudden you're holier than thou, and oh, I can't hear it. No, you got to listen to people sometimes. Native Americans. My grandfather was Native American, and he talked like it, he acted like it, in the sense of, yeah, he was it, but I'm just saying he had American in him too. He had a lot of, I say American, he had English and other things, German, etc. He wasn't full-blood Native American, but we always talked about the stars and the moon and, the stars. Maybe there's something else. Maybe they're all planets. My grandpa had such an imagination, and he never squandered anybody else. He let the Jehovah's Witnesses come in. He let all kinds of people come. He talked to everybody and anybody. He never ridiculed them. He never told them they were crazy. He never told them anything like that. He sat there and listened to them. But he expected them to listen to him too, because some of them tried to get up and walk out. He got up and locked the door one time and said, no, you spoke. I'll let you in. Now listen to me. Well, that's how you get things done. And that's also how you hear perspectives. And so many people don't want to hear that. You're locked and loaded on what you believe. And it's okay. You need to be. But certain things you don't need to be afraid of. So if Muslims were here, that's what Americans call Muslims. All right. Let me speak Southern here. Muslims. But Muslims, all right, if they were going to do anything, they'd already done it. They'd already done it. And I know people are talking about New York and all that. It's part of an operation. You got to know 45-47 is the whole operation. We are still in the partial continuity government, ladies and gentlemen. Until the law shows otherwise, I'm sorry, it sounds like a broken record. But it's a beautiful broken record. And that beautiful broken record is supposed to keep you from doing what? Panicking or feeling lost and this and scared and fearful. But if you're a Christian and you're fearful, well, you're not a Christian. And I'm going to quote Johnny Cash. This was real what happened to Johnny Cash. This really happened, and he really said this. I know many people who work for him personally. Johnny Cash was everything he did say he was and showed and displayed, etc. But Johnny Cash, when they said, Johnny, your Christian folks don't want to see you singing to a bunch of murderers and prisoners and people like that. He said, well, they're not Christian then. And then when he got into prison, this also happened when the warden, they did show it in the movie, but this really happened when the warden said, hey, can you not sing songs that remind them of where they are and what they did? And he said, you think they forgot? You think they forgot why they're here daily? See, that's why Johnny Cash should be admired, is because common sense. You think they forgot while they're in prison? And then he truly did. The very first song out. That's why the movie depicted that. But if you go back, watch. Very first song. I woke up one morning while making my rounds. I took a shot of cocaine and I shot my woman down. He just rubbed it right back. That is a true rebel. That is a true outlaw. That is a true patriot. That's what that looks like.
And I do want to say real quickly too, because I have had people that I know that are back east and everything like that, and a lot of things that we're hearing and seeing. Remember, everybody, we hear often things aren't always as they seem, right? And what I'm being told back there in New York, it's not like they're portraying it to be on the news and stuff like that. And it's like that other everywhere too, that they want to portray all this horrible stuff happening. So that's why it's really important who
But
you listen to and
they
who you
are
follow.
under a wartime order, people. The media are under a wartime order. 47 U.S. Code Section 606. President Trump tells you this. He said he posted about the AP, the Associated Press. They've been banned from Mar-a-Lago and the White House by the appeals court. There's your major court. That's not your regular civilian courts. What did this Uniform Code of Military Justice and all the articles say about civilians being tried in military courts? It says when civilian courts are not operational, there's not civilian courts operating out there like this. And your appeals court, that's a higher level court. And the appeals court is upholding a ban on the Associated Press, the AP, from being at Mar-a-Lago in the White House. Then you have The View, who are currently under investigation right now. CNN was hammered. MSNBC was hammered. All these people are being hammered. President Trump suing BBC right now. Come on, people. He tells you
to fear.
It's in law. That is an emergency power, though. Restricting telecommunications is an emergency power. And that just also triggered in a good way something else. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what's so hilarious about it. Hilarious, funny, comical. You should get a belly roll out of this. Go ahead and chuckle where you are. And I wouldn't mind if everybody unmuted their mic right now and just went, ha, 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 right? Laugh, but a real one. That was sarcastic, but a real laugh, right? If President Trump never had one single executive order with a national emergency or a national emergency verbally, there were 25 executive orders with national emergencies open from 1979 to 2016 that are still open to this day. And if you went over to the Federal Register right now and there were 0 executive orders with a national emergency and or a proclamation or a verbal national emergency by President Trump, all 25 of those executive orders with national emergencies from 1979 to 2016, guess what they come with? 120 statutory powers. Each national emergency, it's the same 120 powers, but that would mean that President Trump would have had to revoke every single one of them. And until they were revoked, each one carries the same 120 powers. Those 120 powers are your restricting telecommunications, your regulating commerce, your tariffs. I mean, so that's what's so hilarious about this. That's why the deep state, they were screwed no matter what. See, and this is why, ladies and gentlemen, apply this. This is why certain things should not be in law unless it needs to be in law. So the deep state did all these things through the years where they tried to limit the president. They tried to put constraints on the president in the 1973 where he had to declare a national emergency to use the military. Oh, well, there's 25 executive orders open with national emergencies before President Trump. So that was all done by presidents. And then they left them open because the money was too good that they were making off of these deep state wars and all these little conflicts they were having. So they left those open. The 1951, making it to where the president only has X amount of terms, but Congress is unlimited. As many times they get voted in. So see, the very thing they put in the law backfired on them. And everything that is in law currently, right now, as we speak, that President Trump put an executive order to, meaning an order and enforcement to, all the laws were in law long before 2017. So see, the deep state, they put so much in law and they put so much constraint that the very thing that they thought was limiting and they thought was alienating themselves in this pinnacle and never was going to be disrupted is the very thing that's going back on them. So once you learn that, Once you learn that, you will literally, if you're somewhere in North Dakota right now where you're probably freezing your rear end off, you'll probably get in your Speedo right now, and probably some of us don't want to see that, but you'd get in your Speedo and you'd run outside right now, and you would look like you just hit a nude beach and ain't nobody on it to see yourself, and you go, woo! And you run up and down it, because this stuff is that easy. Once you divorce your feelings and emotions and all the drama and the propaganda, and once you apply the simple logics of these things, the mainstream media are under a wartime order. And the way you prove that is everything that President Trump tells you. All the terms he's using are not government terms. They are law, a war manual, military occupation, which means you will be seeing punishment. You just got to wait for it, because they're building it up. They're building all that up, and it should be built up. Let's be honest. There are men and women that I know, and I don't know all of them, but I know some of them. There are men and women that you're never going to know who are part of this operation on that higher level that put all this together, and they deserve the credit and the glory in their own context, in their own way, when it comes and how it comes. And the ones that do get recognized, they deserve that. And
So
we want them to have that.
So no fear. So, those that reach out to me and everything, no fear. Like Derek says, it's building up. You have to have some patience. It's meant to be this way. So hang in there.
Let me say one more thing.
Okay, because I got to cut it off.
Let me say one more thing really quick. Everybody knows how a Southern boy loves their mama. All right. I told my mother and my grandmother, God rest her soul, when she was still living, I told my mother and grandmother way back in 2016 and 17, but really in 2017, when President Trump declared Jerusalem the capital of Israel, I told my mother, I said, when I get scared, you can get scared. All right. So I'm telling every one of you, and now I'm just one person. I'm one little tiny notch on the whole thing. There's a lot of us, but military veterans in operations, certain aspects, when we get scared, you can get scared.
Amen. Don't be scared, everybody. God has this. And guys, Derek's with me every other Monday. So Derek, we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Sounds good.
All right, Derek. Have a great evening. And everybody here, have a great rest of your evening. We'll have Rick Anson on here tomorrow from Brain IQ Health. And then on Wednesday, we're going to have Jake Lang, a J6er. We're going to have Silk, SGN on, and then Dallas from PPN. So the times are on the wall. Derek, thank you so much. Thank you for all that you're doing. And, you're just getting vindicated as well. So congratulations on that. And we'll see you in 2 weeks.
All right. Sounds good. We'll be closer to the big fat man coming down the chimney.
I know, right? And everybody,
Yeah.
Derek, I won't 2 weeks have a happy Thanksgiving, everybody. So it's next week. Damn, that came quick. So Derek, have a great turkey day, and I'll reach out to you before then to wish you a happy Thanksgiving. But God bless you all. Have a great evening, and we'll talk soon.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thank you, Derek.